All right. So we're going to dive in today to go into taming anxiety during the pandemic or during COVID. I assume most of your students, to some degree, what you used to do is very different now than what you're doing. You know, whether it's that you're in class online or you're not getting close to people due to a couple of coughs here and there, getting you kind of wary of, what could take place. Typically, whenever there's uncertainty, we don't know what could happen, that raises our level of anxiety. So through this course today or through this lecture, I'd like for you to walk away with some tools, a couple of coping skills, so that you're able to continue to be your best version, continue to excel and accomplish all the things that you want to accomplish, while living, in a climate as far as the one that we live in. So I'm going to kind of share my screen as soon as I can, and I ask you for your involvement. So kind of tell me what you guys would like. Would you like for me to run you through a presentation, or would you like for me to have the presentation on the back end? I go through it and then I leave space for dialogue as we go through each section. What do you feel more comfortable with? Let's do a yes for option 1, a no for option 2.
Can you say the options again? Sorry.
Yeah, so option 1 will be that on my end, I'll go through the presentation. You won't see it, but it gives you space to ask questions. We can have dialogue back and forth. Option 2 would be that I have the presentation as the main screen. I'm going through everything, and then at the end, we do Q&A. What do y'all prefer? Let's see who gets the majority vote. Okay, so I'm seeing mostly 2s. There we go. It's a good way to show your voice and the power behind it. All right, so we're going to go with the presentation. Give me a second. And if any time the audio breaks up and you can hear me, cannot hear me, just let me know. Okay, everyone, audio is working pretty good. We're good to go? All right, perfect. All right, so taming anxiety during pandemic. The pandemic, obviously now it's COVID. Again, my name is Juan Santos. I own a practice here called Santos Counseling. I'm also a doctorate student at a school called the University of the Cumberland. It's an online program, just focused more on counseling, being able to dive a little bit deeper into the clinical world. At some point, I'd like to teach at a graduate level. So hopefully soon, before all my hairs turn gray, I'll be there. But every day, I question that decision. All right, so life before COVID, we were able to give hugs, right? Just like this koala. Is that how you pronounce it, a koala? Giving a hug to a tree. We were able to give some high fives to people, right? Come here, brother. Now it's like distance, right? We can't give the high five. We were in crowded places and it felt fine. Now you're probably in crowded places and you get a little bit nervous, a little bit wary of what can take place. All of that goes a long way. There's a lot of research that goes into physical touch. When you're able to hug someone, it supports our level of certain chemicals that help us calm down, help us feel relaxed, help us feel loved. And when we're not able to do that, then we're not receiving it. So it makes us a little more prone to feeling anxious or feeling on edge. Each of you can kind of take a moment and think about whenever you are stressed, do you feel better after someone gives you a hug? Do you feel better after someone sits close to you? And if you do, and now you're not receiving it, then that kind of gives you an idea that your anxiety or your level of stress is getting further, out of a scope where you can kind of control it. So that's something to keep an eye out on as far as your own independent level of stress and how you deal with it. A little bit about me. That's me, my wife, and our kids. I'm a counselor, a dad. I've got 2 kids, coach, and probably maybe like you, I wear a lot of hats in life. And one of the things about wearing a lot of hats, like you guys are probably students, maybe some of you have jobs, maybe you're a sibling, you've got a parent. Each of those hats push you in a certain way to present yourself in a certain role. Like as a student, you come into class with your game face, right? That student face. And whenever you're with your friends, you have that game face of being a friend. Each of those push you to maybe experience a certain level of stress, such as I got to stay on top of my schoolwork. Because if I don't, then I won't be able to achieve my academic goals or my goals that are later down the road. And then those type of expectations, due to the hat that we wear, add a certain level of stress to us. And then typically under stress, we may not perform as high or as we would like to. So this type of information, it helps us to get to know ourselves so that we know how to function. And as you notice, making silly faces is a great way to reduce stress. As far as my own journey with anxiety, I've got all your videos at the worst place. There it is. Okay, it was like right on top of my wording, so I couldn't see it. I've struggled with anxiety for a lot of my life, all the way from the classroom to working with individuals. Some of the symptoms that I experience with anxiety include sweaty hands, hand tremors, something that's called a flight of thoughts or rapid thoughts. That's where you get worried about one thing, such as I was sitting in a class with someone that said they had COVID, and then that thought then grows into a secondary thought. What if I have it? And then it goes into a third level thought. And the more of these thoughts that you have, the more anxious that you become. So again, it's important for us to get to know our level of stress and how that can transition into anxiety. And I share a little bit about mine so that hopefully from your end, that sense of vulnerability allows you to become more comfortable with yourself and with who you are. And then once you're able to do that, to really, face who you are, that level of comfort pushes you to make the changes that are necessary in life to achieve the goals that you have. Today, I'm going to give you 3 areas to focus on as you kind of reach and try to work towards taming anxiety during the pandemic. The first is going to be building a foundation. And then we're going to go into tools that allow you to address certain anxiety symptoms. And then we'll touch on a lifestyle. So creating your foundation. One of the common questions that people have with anxiety is, what is it? So whenever you think about it, try to think about triggers that connect to anxiety or what drives it. I have that cloud there with some thunderstorms coming out, not just because it looks pretty cool, but that could be a trigger for people where, you wake up and the weather's just looking like that picture. And then all of a sudden your mood is a little bit off. And you're kind of like, well, what's going on here? Nothing quote unquote has happened, but that changing climate can affect our mood, which then can lead us to feeling a little more stressed, a little more anxious. That's something a little more in the background as far as that in your face. A loud trigger could be that if you've got a test coming up, but maybe you don't feel prepared, and you're acknowledging that you're really stressed, and then that stress leads to you feeling anxious, and then you're sitting there taking the test, you're struggling to focus. At that point, you're able to kind of have an idea of, okay, this is my anxiety coming up. Anxiety is our mind and body's reaction to stress. And stress can come up in different ways. So one of the ways that maybe you're feeling stress from your end is feeling overworked as a student and underpaid. That's a joke there as a student life, which actually follows you all the way to the doctorate life. So that's exciting to know. Another stress or anxiety is dangerous situations or situations that are unfamiliar. So right now with the pandemic of COVID, a lot of individuals experience stress and anxiety. You probably see it, all over the media and different articles, because we don't really know the end result, right? It's different if someone says, here is treatment, and you're able to, solve it. You're able to get sick and then solve it right away. But because we don't know, it leads the mind to wander. And then, from a work perspective too, today you're students and you're looking at jobs you want to have in the future, and you may be thinking about, can I have that job? Will I be able to finish school? Will I be able to get the GPA that I want or go to graduate school? All of those type of thoughts have a lot of uncertainty, and that uncertainty leads to stress coming up. Now, there are healthy levels of anxiety because it is the body's natural response to danger. Like an example of that would be if you put your hand in fire, you're probably pretty excited that your brain tells you, don't do that. Imagine if it didn't, right? The fire going and you stick your hand in it and the brain didn't alert you to pull your hand back. And at that point, you're excited about it. And then there's some other levels of anxiety or stress, and I kind of use those synonymous, that are helpful to us. You may have found yourself in situations where you're excited to do something, such as today. I'm really excited to be here with you. But within my core, within my body, I feel an uneasiness. I feel a stress, right? But that's a good stress. That's a stress telling me that you're doing something you're passionate about. You're doing something that you're excited about. And if you control that stress, you're able to continue to perform. But then if that stress controls you, it hinders your ability to perform. Oh, sorry, too many clicking here. Common symptoms of anxiety. You may have noticed that your sleep is out of order. So right now, towards the end of the semester, you're going into November, December. Maybe you're doing crunch time. You're trying to keep up with your grades, your tests, family life, relationships, and everything else on your to-do list. And then at some point, you might find yourself going to bed at 2 or 3, or you go to bed at 11, and then you wake up at 2 or 3. That sleep cycle is rough, is irregular, as we would say in the clinical world. And that means that your anxiety is probably a little bit high. You may notice your appetite is changing. So some people will say things to me whenever I'm in the office. I'll ask them about appetite, and they'll say they eat more whenever they're anxious. Or some people say they'll eat less. Common example we see in the media or movies. Somebody breaks up with their partner, and then after they break up, they're like, I can't eat anything, right? So it's like your body's response. And with that, again, it's important to get to know it, because for us as humans to be able to function in a healthy way, our appetite and our sleep are, two of the core areas to look at. With your anxiety, you may notice that you're on edge. On edge could be like you feel irritable. You don't feel 100% stable, 100% yourself. Your body can have reactions. Your heart rate can start going a little bit faster and faster. Your respiration, you notice that you're taking short breaths, or maybe you yawn. I don't know if you ever have that where you're feeling kind of anxious and then you're doing like these yawns, but it's not a yawn like you're getting tired. What's happening is your body's becoming more and more anxious, so it's more difficult for your lungs to open and close as they should. And again, that's the anxiety stirring up. You may feel overly worried. So there's worried. I'm worried about tests. And now I'm overly worried that if I fail this test, I'm going to get kicked out of school and I'm going to be homeless, right? So that's overly worried. You may notice that you struggle to control the worry. So you're feeling worried, the heart rate's going up, and your hands are shaking. And even though you're doing the breathing and you're having positive thoughts, it's still there. So there's that struggle. And then again, the racing thoughts, we talked about that one, where you have one thought to another. Or why do people have anxiety? This is just really a short list. There's so many reasons. It could be a past trauma. An example of that could be if I grew up in a house where my parents engaged in domestic violence, right? My parents hit each other and fought. So then now as an adult, I find myself in a classroom, and maybe when my teacher, right, my professor raises their tone a little bit, they say, hey, pay attention. That for me, that creates like this button that it pushes. And then subconsciously that old thoughts, right, the old trauma of whenever I was a child, it wakes up and it causes me to feel anxious. It could be a fear of rejection. You may see a pretty person that you like and you want to go up to them and you want to say, hey, you want to go get a cup of coffee, or can I take you out for a drink? But there's that anxiety, that worry of what if they say no? And can I handle that? So that fear of rejection limits our ability to do it. And then that ties in with decision making. There's lack of information. Sometimes we get really anxious, just like COVID. It's a lack of information of knowing what's going to happen if we get sick, especially when you see so much of the media. Sometimes people get sick and it leads all the way to a really negative ending. And other times people get the virus, right? And they say, hey, I was fine. There's such a strong level of uncertainty due to the lack of information. There's a sheltered upbringing. Maybe you grew up in a certain town or in a certain lifestyle where you weren't exposed to, other things that people were exposed to. Let's say you weren't exposed to a crowded place. Now you get older, you go to college, it's a huge environment. that safety net that you used to have, and we'll call it a safety net, quote unquote, because maybe it wasn't really a safety net. It allowed you to stay calm, we'll say. And now that you go to college and you're in this huge environment around tons of people, the anxiety is going up. Maybe you have that feeling of, I miss home. And usually that's due to somehow within our upbringing, we were sheltered in a way that it exposed us to certain things. And then change is that common one you always see. You know, people say, hey, I got to move to a new town. And then there's the fear of what's going to happen. Change is something that unless we decide on it, we're not really a big fan of. With anxiety, a couple of things that help is your anxiety does not equate to shame. And that's something I struggle with a lot in the past when I was younger, where you may feel that because you're anxious, you're less than, or you're not capable, or it's a weakness. And when we have those type of thoughts, it's going to be so much harder to move forward, overcome anything. You know, if you're feeling anxious and then your thought is, you know, I hate that I'm this way. You know, you're beating yourself up to a point. How are you, you know, how are you later going to be able to accomplish X, Y, or Z when you beat yourself down so much? So we really want to change that mindset. If anything, you know, I like to look at anxiety as a beautiful piece of who you are. It's something that allows you to be unique. And then if you're able to utilize it in an effective way, it could be something that allows you to propel or to move through life. So now we're going to transition. That was a little bit about the foundation. We're going to go into now tools. For tools in the counseling world or mental health world, we look at those as coping skills, ways to cope. I am a big nerd when it comes to superheroes. You can't see it, but this is my home office, and I've got like a poster over there with Marvel characters. I got Hulk, Spider-Man. You probably don't want to hear any of that. I'm just sharing with you the excitement. And Batman is one of my favorite ones. Now, Batman, he's got this tool belt, and on his tool belt, he's got pretty much every tool that you will need to deal with the situation. If you're dealing with stress in your life, which I assume as students you are, and more than likely, there's probably good reasons why you're dealing with stress, because you want to achieve certain things. You want to graduate. To graduate, you're going to have to confront stress. Maybe you're in a relationship. To have a great relationship, you're going to have to confront stress, because there's going to probably be times that you're going to bump heads with your partner about differences. That's going to cause stress. So it's important for us to, instead of avoid the thought that I'm going to have a stress-free life, how do I confront the idea that I will have stress in my life, and then how will I build the coping skills to address it? A fun one, these are just some fun strategies I like to utilize, is storytelling. Now, doesn't mean you're gonna have to like read a book or anything like that. But typically when it comes to anxiety, we come up with ideas of what could happen while it has yet to happen, right? So I'll give you an example. I'm walking through a crowd and I'm at Starbucks, right? Most people like Starbucks. And someone's kind of close to me and they cough, right? And then my thoughts go up and it goes, whoa, what if this person has COVID? What if I get sick? And I get my coffee and I'm driving home and I'm like, man, I may have something. And I'm getting closer to home and then I see the kids, my kids, Nola and Alex, they're at the window and they're looking at me and I'm like, oh man, what if I have something and now they're gonna have something? Right? And so far in the rational world, right, you guys listening in, we know nothing really has happened. If anything, my anxiety has led to a story with uncertainty, a lot of worry, and a really bad ending. And each of you are the authors to your life. I mean, that's why you're in school. You're trying to create something for yourself. You're trying to become something. Just like an author creates a book and then we, enjoy it. So instead of going in that direction, what if at that coffee shop I would have went somewhere different? My thought would have been, after the person coughed, I hope they're okay. Let me offer them some water. That would have led to the anxiety being tamed and then that entire day going in a different direction. Exercise is something that should be in our life continuously. I use YouTube a lot because it's pretty much it's free, and that's always good, especially for college students. But also there's a lot of different professionals on there. I'll go on there. I have a channel that I do different conversations on regarding mental health. There's a lady that I like. Her name is Adrienne. Maybe some of you have checked her out. Yoga with Adrian. Like my wife and I will do yoga as often as we can. What's happening on a chemical level is that you've got certain chemicals that are supportive to reducing your anxiety and stress being elevated, going up. So if you have like a really rough day, some of you may have went and exercised or went for a walk, and then you're like, oh man, I feel a little bit better, right? Magic just took place. It's like Harry Potter got you with his wand. But what's happening on a chemical level is that those chemicals that you want to go up, they're raising due to the exercise that you're doing. So the more of that we do, the better that we feel. And then when you have those rough days and you're doing the exercise, it's able to push those down. Keeping a journal is another supportive skill. A journal can be whatever you want. Some of you out there may be artists or craft like individuals. Others just want a blank slate, a piece of paper where you write, today I had a really good day, blah, blah, blah. You could do a prompt journal where at the top it says, Mondays are for the best things that I am excited for in my life. And a prompt allows you to write about something so you don't feel like you have to stare at a blank sheet of paper. Gardening, indoor, outdoor. The research behind gardening is that it helps you feel that you're taking care of something. And then when we take care of something, that allows us to feel more productive, more effective in our life. Healthy hygiene, all the way from, taking showers, taking your bath, doing your hair, getting a haircut. I may be the only person out there, but after I get a haircut or I get my beard trimmed, I'm like, man, I feel so good. I'm not sure what goes on in there, but it's really helpful. It's even a weird coping skill that I'll do. Like my wife, she'll be like, you're having a rough day, or it seems like you've been kind of on edge lately. Why don't you get a haircut? And it's a really great coping skill. So that one's something to look at. The last ones is music or art. So that's examples of that will be, you can put a playlist on your phone as far as like music to help me reduce stress, music to help me calm down, and allow it to be very specific. Like really take time to pick out which songs you want to listen to. And then a worry jar. The whole idea behind a worry jar would be, let's just pretend like this is a worry jar. I would keep this jar, if it's a worry jar, somewhere near me. And if it's near me, as the day goes on, every time I have a worry thought, like, man, what if I don't finish school? I would get a sheet of paper, write it on there, and then rip that paper off and then toss it into that worry jar. Right? So you kind of see that, the subconscious effect here. And then at the end of the week, as the week goes by and I get to that seventh day, Sunday, I'll dump out the worry jar. And then I get to kind of see where my worries are at, how scattered they are. You may find that you worry a lot about school. And then at that point, you know how to effectively address your anxiety versus just, I'm anxious about a whole bunch of stuff. Now we're going to go into the last one, lifestyle shift. So here's something that all of you probably already know. 24 hours in a day, 365 days a year. So then here's the question. How many hours of the day do you want to focus on problems and worry? Right? Most of you out there are probably like 0, man, which is good, right? We don't want to spend, time focused on that because that's going to allow us to be stressed. It's going to increase our anxiety and our worry. Most problems in life, I think we know that they're not solved or they become really difficult to solve. And because of that, it's important for us to be conscious and alert of when is the right time to address an issue versus, when do we just kind of put it to the side and say, at a more effective time, I'll come to it. I'll share an example of what took place during graduate school. I went to Winston-Salem State University in Winston, and we went through some research and different data, but basically in a very black and white way, we as humans, as people, we can become very fixated on the idea of focusing on problems. And I'm not sure if you ever kind of take a step back and ask yourself that question. In my life, do I overly focus on problems, or do I navigate life where there's an issue? I find an appropriate place to deal with it, and then I continue to be conscious and alert on what I'm doing. The activity that we did on a graduate level was that our professor gave us this picture, right? And the picture had a lady in there in a very messy room. There were beer bottles on the table. She was kind of like laying on the couch. There was an ashtray with some smoke coming up, and it looked very messy, right? So I'm sure most of you have an idea of what a messy room looks like and what, old beer bottles will look like, or, lit cigarettes. So then the question was, what do you think? What's happening here? Which is, a lot of the basis of psychology, trying to understand certain situations and create some kind of interpretation from them. And you're probably guessing what most of us said. Most of us went, maybe she's struggling with addiction, lethargic, right? Lazy. And we pointed items like that. So then, interesting enough, the professor was like, well, no, she's just tired, man. She's a mom, she's a single mom, and she had a lot going on. So she didn't feel like cleaning everything the night before. And she had a couple of beers, but she's not addicted. And then she's working on, ending her smoking. So what was interesting about that is all of us as counselors sitting there, all of us went to the problem. And when we do that, when we overly focus on the problem, it pushes us to fixate on it. And then that in a way allows us to miss everything else that's happening in life, because we could have seen so much more in that picture, but it's all we saw. So as you're kind of listening in, kind of think about your life when it comes to anxiety. Do you hyper focus on just the anxiety, or do you allow yourself to live your life in all the other beautiful ways that you can? So whenever we do that, whenever we tend to overly focus on the problems, what's happening is that we're building these internal walls. And the internal walls, what they do is that they make it difficult for us to heal. And then that difficulty in healing limits our ability to appropriately address anxiety, right? So it's a very black and white way to look at that would be, because I'm so focused on my worries and my anxiety, I'm not seeing everything else that's taking place. I'm not enjoying watching movies. I'm not going on dates. I'm not laughing and pursuing my goals, right? I'm not doing the things that will naturally lower my stress, because I'm so focused on here. And all the things that will lower my stress, I have walls up because I'm here doing this. So again, as I shared before, we do need to solve problems, right? Again, there's 24 hours in a day and 365 days a year. So it's important for us to focus on an appropriate time to do it. Some people choose to go to counseling, and that's their hour where they dig deep and focus on, recovery and healing. I see a counselor. I like to do a lot of fishing too. So I'll go out there and fish. I won't catch anything sometimes, which stinks. I'm like, come on, one fish, just bite, please. But it doesn't. But at least I'm out there, and that's a good space for me to kind of get my headspace. I shared with you before that getting a haircut, that one's therapeutic. So think about those coping skills for you, and then when's an appropriate time for you to use them so that you're able to lower that stress. And that wraps it up. Any questions at all? Nope. Well, that's all right. Did you guys find it helpful? Well, that's good.
Come on, no questions? Okay, that's all right. Yeah, anything else, Juan?
No, I think, you guys are all in undergrad, right? Yeah. So hopefully a lot of those stressors connected to you. And if they did, anxiety can be something that is limiting. Limiting to the point that if you have a goal, as much as you want that goal, that anxiety, if not addressed, will be a wall to get to that goal. I could want to be the best public speaker, and that could be my goal. But if I'm not able to address my anxiety, then it's going to limit my ability. And I think right now, all of you are at a really good point. I believe your university, Elon, right, offers like a wellness center where you're able to communicate with somebody there, as far as, what you're doing in life. It's a lot of self-help books. And I feel like now, you dive into Instagram or online, YouTube, there's tons of different clinicians out there doing stories. Just check those things out. Find somebody that you like, that you vibe with, and allow that to be like your space of moving forward in life.
Well, yeah, thanks so much, Juan. Your presentation, I think, was very helpful. So we really appreciate it, and you're welcome back anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all. Do you want me to stop the recording and then send that over to you?
Yeah, sure. That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.